Hello, my name is Nicholas and welcome to another Swarm update video. What I've been working on recently is mainly an interface for the Swarm simulation that means that you can now use mouse interactions to change the options and various settings within the simulation. If we move over to our simulation, we should immediately see the interface appearing along the bottom of the screen, and we should also notice that the mouse has been reskinned. The interface is broken up into two sections. The left-hand section, which changes what happens when the mouse is clicked in the world, and the right-hand section, which changes things like display options. In the middle of the interface, we have a pause play button, and we also have a hide and show interface button, which will collapse the interface down to give you more screen space and not obscure your view of what's happening, and which will then show the interface again when you want to change options. The pause play button can be used just with the mouse. It can also be used using the standard P key on the keyboard and using the spacebar as well now. And the buttons will automatically update their state based on the options being changed. So on the left hand side of the screen of the interface, we have our mouse mode buttons. What these first four do is change what happens when the mouse is clicked to be the spawning of either a certain type of robot or a rock. So this first one, this M in the shape of a movement robot, will allow the user to spawn a movement robot where the mouse is clicked. The S will allow you to spawn a scout robot, this one will spawn a task robot, and this one will allow you to spawn rocks, as you might expect. This final one, the question mark, is what was the default query type mouse click, which selected the object that you clicked on to show its debug information up the top left hand corner. What I've also done is changed the keys which are associated with these objects. Before the interface was added, pressing the key that corresponds to one of these objects would spawn that object where the mouse was currently in the simulation. So pressing the R key would spawn a rock at that location. However, with the interface added, this was now very confusing because you could have things selected. You could have a rock selected and have movement robots spawning where your mouse was, and it wasn't immediately clear to someone what was causing this to happen. So what I've done now is I've changed it around so that when you press one of these letter keys, it will in fact select that particular object to be spawned when you click. It no longer spawns where your mouse is, it simply changes the option, which is also a lot more in line with what people expected to happen when they pressed the R key. They would expect that option to be selected rather than to have something happen at the cursor, because they haven't used the mouse, they've used the keyboard. So that was a slight change to how that sort of functionality worked. What we have over here are our more display option type keys. The first one, this I, shows the information about the simulation. And we can toggle that on and off. That's just the debug information, as you've seen already. With our question mark option selected, we can click on robots and see what they're doing like we could before. And we can watch as the movement robots move around the screen, and we can still see that debug information. And we can toggle it on and off now without having to use the keyboard. Our other options are to turn on and off the vision range of the robots. What I've done is wrapped this up into a single button that will display the vision for all the robots, regardless of type. But what it does is internally sorts the robots based on how large that vision range is. So ScoutBots which have a larger vision range are drawn first, and then movement robots which have a smaller vision range are then drawn over top of that, which means that we don't have these smaller circles hidden behind the larger circles. That's vision range, which now also incidentally works for the task robots. We also have communication range, which is this Wi-Fi type looking button, which again shows the communication between all of the robots regardless of type, whether that's between movement robots and scout robots, or between scout robots and other scout robots. And we can toggle that on and off. This flag is the spawning task function, So now that can be turned on and off within the simulation itself rather than within the actual program. So if you want tasks to be spawning, you can turn that on. If you want nothing to be happening unless you specifically do it, you can turn that off and do everything by manually creating rocks. And this last button simply changes the debug information to be credit/copyright information. At the moment it just says who programmed it and when. I'm also planning to add the link to my YouTube page and the link to my LinkedIn profile, just if someone wants to get in contact with me and or wants to ask me questions directly. So that's the majority of the changes which have been made, mainly just this interface, adding all of the buttons, all of the code that lets the buttons have highlights and press states and draw the icons and be able to hook into existing functions that the game provides and modify those options and change what's happening. Another thing I will say about the buttons just briefly is that all of the button icons are in fact white icons, and the color of the icon is modified during runtime depending on whether or not that option is on or off. Which means that we don't have anything weird happening where buttons have been pressed but the option's been misaligned with what the button state is representing. What we also have is a measure to make sure that nothing actually gets spawned behind the interface. When you're clicking on these buttons in particular, you don't want to be clicking and having these guys appearing behind the interface. So that's what I've been working on recently. What I plan to work on in the near future is getting hardware limitations of robots implemented and working on that sort of feature. My original plan was to model bot battery life, so every bot would have an internal energy charge that it would use up while it's moving around the world. When that charge got down to a certain point, the robot would then need to return back to the shuttle and recharge itself. And where the shuttle would get its charge from would be from solar panel type robots, which would need to be moved to sun areas, recharge, and then brought back to share that charge with the shuttle, which would then share that charge down to any other robots that needed to be recharged. I've been experimenting with this and trying to figure out exactly how I wanted to do it in a few testing versions, and I've been coming up across numerous issues trying to get the energy levels balanced properly and trying to make it so that it all happens fast enough for you to see that it's actually having an impact, but that bots still have a large enough battery that they can do tasks in between needing to recharge, and all sorts of other minor complications that have made it very difficult to sort of get it working properly. So what I'm instead going to be working on is having bots be damaged or functional. So in this plan, every bot will have a flag that will say the robot is either functioning fine or it is damaged in some way. Robots will be damaged either via a random internal timer or possibly by users clicking on them to damage them in some way. Once a robot is damaged, it will be recognized by the Scout network, and then other movement robots will come and collect that damaged robot and take it back towards the shuttle, where it will be repaired. The idea behind this feature is that it still models the need for robots to be maintained and the need for the swarm to have some method by which to look after the members that it has and make sure that those members don't become non-functional. But it also removes a lot of the complexity of needing to deal with balancing charge life and sharing power between robots. Theoretically speaking, this new feature should be able to be implemented simply by slightly modifying the Scout robots so that they can recognize damaged robots in the same way that they recognize rocks, and using that same push type mechanic which is already implemented, and then simply allowing the shuttle to recognize damaged robots nearby and repairing them. So that's about it for this update. If you have any comments or questions or suggestions, leave them in the comments section down below. If you enjoyed this video, give it a like. If you want to see more videos like it, please feel free to check out my channel and maybe even subscribe if you want to keep up to date with updates on this project and other projects that I'll be doing in future. Thanks for watching.